Something is quietly shifting in NASCAR right now, and if you have been watching closely over the past few weeks, you can already feel it building. This is not the kind of change that explodes into headlines overnight. It is the kind that creeps up on you slowly, race by race, lap by lap, until one day you look up and realize that everything you thought you knew about a driver has completely changed. There was one question that followed Shane Van Gisbergen everywhere he went in NASCAR. One doubt that hung over every race weekend, and for a long time, it did not have a clear answer. But now, that answer is starting to take shape, and if things continue moving in this direction, we might genuinely be watching the early stages of something that could shake up the entire field, not just on one type of track, but across the whole schedule. Since the moment Shane Van Gisbergen arrived in NASCAR full-time, the central conversation around him has always come back to one simple question. Can he actually figure out oval racing? Nobody ever questioned his raw talent or his ability behind the wheel. His road course credentials spoke for themselves, and everyone in the paddock knew what kind of driver he was in that environment. But NASCAR ovals are an entirely different challenge. The traffic is relentless, tire management becomes a strategic weapon, and long green flag runs demand a patience and rhythm that cannot be faked or rushed. In his earlier outings on ovals, you could see him working through it in real time, still searching for the feel, still trying to understand the deeper language of this style of racing. But over the past several weeks, something has genuinely changed. At tracks like Martinsville Speedway, the improvement has become impossible to ignore. This is not a situation where a driver gets lucky with strategy or benefits from attrition moving him up the running order. What we are seeing is real, measurable, earned progress. He is now running comfortably inside the top portion of the field, and he is sustaining that pace across entire stints, not just flashing quick lap times before fading back. His long run speed has improved in a way that stands up to scrutiny, but perhaps the most telling sign of his development is what is happening with his tire management. Early in his oval education, burning through tires too quickly was one of the most visible gaps in his game. He would struggle to maintain his pace deep into runs, while more experienced drivers were still finding grip. That picture is beginning to look very different now. He is conserving his tires in the early laps so that he has something left to attack with when it matters most. He is adjusting his line as the track surface evolves through a run. He is staying in contention during the long green flag stretches where NASCAR races are truly decided. These are not small details. These are the fundamental secrets of oval racing, and he is actively unlocking them one race at a time. The deeper change here is not just technical, it is mental. There is a clear difference between a driver who is reacting to what the race throws at him and a driver who is anticipating it before it happens. Reacting means you are always slightly behind, always playing catch-up, always one step removed from where you need to be. Anticipating means you are reading the race ahead of the moment, making decisions based on what is coming rather than what has already passed. That transition from reactive to anticipatory is exactly where rookies stop being rookies and start becoming genuine competitors. And the people inside the garage who watch these things closely will tell you the same thing. Oval racing at this level is about rhythm, patience, and discipline as much as it is about outright speed. SVG is demonstrating all three of those qualities with increasing consistency, and that is a significant development. Not everything has gone smoothly, and it would be dishonest to suggest otherwise. Bristol Motor Speedway is one of the most demanding and unforgiving short tracks on the entire NASCAR schedule, and that race did not produce the result that his recent form might have suggested. He got collected in an incident, and the finishing position on paper looks poor. But the finishing position on paper does not capture what actually happened. And any honest evaluation of that race has to account for the circumstances. The real question worth asking is where he finishes if that incident never occurs. Based on everything we had seen from him in the weeks leading up to that race, there is a strong and legitimate argument that Bristol could have represented another step forward in his development. Calling it a setback misses the point. Bristol exposes weaknesses in every driver who runs there, and the fact that the conversation around his Bristol race centered on what might have been rather than what went wrong tells you everything about how far he has already come. Now take a step back and look at the full picture, because this is where the story becomes genuinely serious. SVG is no longer a driver who is simply lost on ovals and surviving on road course talent alone. He is evolving as a complete racing driver, and he is doing it at a pace that should have everyone else in the garage paying close attention. Because while all of this oval development is happening, While he is still refining his craft on those tracks, one thing has remained completely unchanged. On road courses, he is already a problem for the entire field. So now take this version of him, the one who is beginning to understand tire conservation, race rhythm, and traffic management on ovals, and combine that with the road course excellence that was never in question. And what you get is not a specialist anymore. What you get is the outline of a complete driver, and complete drivers in NASCAR are the ones who change the entire competitive picture of a season. We have seen this pattern play out before in NASCAR history. A driver arrives with one obvious and undeniable strength, and the sport immediately labels them as a one-dimensional specialist. Everyone acknowledges the talent, everyone respects what they can do in their best environment, but the prevailing assumption is that the weaknesses will keep them from ever being a true championship-level threat. Then, quietly, and without much fanfare, that driver starts chipping away at those weaknesses. The results do not change dramatically overnight, so nobody overreacts. The process continues under the radar while the rest of the field focuses elsewhere. And then one day, faster than anyone anticipated, it is too late to adjust. The specialist has become a contender, and the window to stop it has already closed. That pattern is exactly what the current situation with Shane van Gisbergen is starting to resemble. He is not dominating ovals yet, and it is important to be honest about that. But he no longer looks lost on them either, and that gap between lost and competitive is the most important one to cross. He looks more settled, more calculated, and far more aware of what each race is asking from him at any given moment. And once a driver reaches that stage of awareness, the jump from solid to genuinely dangerous can happen with very little warning. Picture the trajectory continuing from here. He keeps building on the short track progress we have seen at places like Martinsville. He cleans up the kind of races where outside circumstances have cost him good results at tracks like Bristol. And he continues doing what he has always done on road courses, which is make everyone else look like they are competing for second place. If that version of Shane van Gisbergen exists by the time the season reaches its most critical stretch, you are talking about a playoff-level driver who is not just making up the numbers. You are talking about someone who can genuinely disrupt the entire picture at the most important moments of the year. NASCAR runs on momentum and confidence, and when those two things align for a driver who already has the underlying talent, results start stacking quickly. The driver who is still learning becomes the driver nobody wants to be racing against late in a run, and by the time the field fully recognizes what has happened, the damage is already done. We are still in the early chapters of this story, and there is plenty left to prove before any of this becomes a settled conclusion, but the foundation that is being built right now is undeniable to anyone watching with honest eyes. The development is real, the rate of improvement is faster than most people expected when the season began, and the combination of skills that is starting to come together is the kind that makes a driver dangerous on every surface, every week, with no place on the schedule to hide from him. Shane van Gisbergen is adapting. He is improving at a rate that should make the rest of the garage uncomfortable, and he is getting closer with every single race to becoming exactly the kind of complete NASCAR driver that changes how an entire season unfolds. That is why this moment matters more than it might appear on the surface. Because what looks like gradual progress right now could very easily become a much larger and much harder to contain story before this season is over.